Friend Mom's innocent connection that became dangerous. Part 1. The beginning, I never expected her to remember my name, let alone the way I take my tea. It wasn't even a special place. Just the small roadside cafe near the bus stop. Plastic chairs, slightly chipped cups, that ceiling fan that always sounded like it was thinking about quitting. I went there most evenings because it filled time. Not because I loved the tea. That's where she started showing up more often. Mrs. Sanaa, my friend Hamza's mom. Mid-40s, maybe a little older, I never asked. She had that calm way of moving, like she wasn't trying to take up space, but somehow still did. The first time she noticed me there, she just nodded politely. Parent of a friend courtesy. Nothing more. Then one evening, as the waiter came over, she said, "He takes less sugar. Otherwise, he won't finish it." The waiter looked confused. I did too. I laughed it off. Yeah, that's true. She just shrugged slightly. You always leave the last sip when it's too sweet. It should have felt ordinary. Instead, it lingered. After that, our timings overlapped more. Not planned, at least I don't think so. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. Silence wasn't awkward with her. Just there. One day, she asked about university. I gave a half answer. She didn't push. Another day, she talked about Hamza moving out for work, how quiet the house felt now. She said it casually, but her fingers kept folding and unfolding the paper napkin in front of her until it was almost threadbare. I noticed things like that. I guess I notice small things when there isn't much else going on. My phone stays quiet most days. Sometimes I type messages and never send them. Sometimes I scroll old chats just to remember what regular conversation used to feel like. I never told her that, obviously, but maybe she saw parts of it anyway. There was this one evening, light rain, power flickering, when we ended up sharing the only dry table under the awning. She joked about how dramatic the weather was acting. I said something about the fan inside finally getting competition. She smiled longer than the joke deserved. Not flirtatious, just warm. Her eyes have that steady look. Not intense, just attentive. Like she's listening even when you stop talking. That used to make me slightly nervous. I'd glance down at my cup, or at her hands resting around hers. She has a small burn scar near her wrist, probably kitchen stuff. I've caught myself noticing it more than once, then quickly looking away. It's harmless, I kept telling myself. She's my friend's mom. She's kind. That's all. Still, when she skipped a few evenings, the cafe felt louder somehow. Or emptier. Hard to explain. Tonight was one of those quieter nights again. Same tea, same chair. I left the last sip untouched without thinking. Habit, I guess. When I got home, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. For a second, I thought it was spam. Then I opened it. "You forgot your umbrella at the cafe." I picked it up. "You can take it tomorrow, if you're coming." No name. No emoji. But I knew. I stared at the message longer than necessary, thumb hovering over the keyboard, not quite sure why my chest felt different. I still haven't replied. Friend Mom's innocent connection that became dangerous. Part 2. Deepening the quiet, I did go back the next evening. Not because of the umbrella. At least that's what I told myself. It had stopped raining anyway. Still, I walked into the cafe, scanning the tables before I even ordered. She was there. Corner seat. My umbrella leaning against her chair like it had always belonged there. "Oh, good," she said when she saw me. I was starting to think I'd adopted it permanently. I laughed a little too quick. Wouldn't be the worst fate for it. She handed it over, but our fingers brushed longer than needed. Nothing dramatic. Just one of those small miscalculations people pretend not to notice. We ordered tea. Less sugar. She reminded the waiter again, casually. For a while, neither of us talked much. The fan hummed. Someone's phone rang repeatedly at another table. I kept turning the umbrella handle in my hands without realizing. Then she said, almost lightly, "Hamza mentioned you've been keeping to yourself lately." I shrugged. "Just busy." She gave me that look. Not prying, not judgmental, just patient. It made half answers feel pointless. I guess I started then stopped. It's quieter than I expected after uni ended. Everyone's scattered. She nodded slowly. That happens. Houses get quiet too. There was a pause. Then she added, softer, "Mine did when my husband left." Not dramatic. No bitterness in her voice. just a fact placed gently on the table between us. I didn't know, I said. Most people don't. Easier that way. Her hand rested near her cup, thumb tracing the rim absently. I noticed that burn scar again. I noticed how steady she seemed, saying something that probably wasn't simple at all. And suddenly I became very aware of the situation, sitting there with my friend's mom, talking about loneliness neither of us had officially named. It should have felt inappropriate. Maybe it did, just quietly. My mind started doing that thing it does, imagining Hamza walking in, raising an eyebrow, imagining how this would look from the outside, imagining myself explaining something I didn't even understand yet. So I steered the conversation safer. Classes, work searches, random cafe gossip. But the air had shifted slightly. When the waiter brought fresh tea, she pushed the sugar sachet aside before he even asked. He won't need it, she said, smiling faintly. Later, when I stood to leave, she noticed my bag zipper was half open, papers nearly slipping out. Wait, she said, standing too. She fixed it carefully, fingers quick but gentle, like it was normal for her to look after small details. Up close, I caught a hint of her perfume. Nothing strong, just clean, familiar somehow. You should take better care of your things, she said. Working on it. Our eyes met for a second longer than conversation requires. No grand expression, just awareness. I made a joke about charging her umbrella storage fees. She smiled, but her gaze lingered a fraction past the punchline. And for reasons I still can't fully explain, that stayed with me all night. Maybe because it didn't feel like flirting. It felt like recognition, like someone quietly noticing the parts of you that usually pass unseen. Friend Mom's innocent connection that became dangerous. Part 3, where things almost shifted after that evening. I told myself to slow down, not stop coming to the cafe. That would have felt obvious even to me, but just reset things. Keep it normal. Polite. Hamza's mom, nothing complicated. Except routines don't reset that easily. We still ended up there around the same time. Still shared a table when it was crowded. Still had those conversations that weren't really conversations, just observations about weather, work, random neighborhood things. But something cautious had crept in, mostly for me. I started arriving later, leaving earlier, checking my phone mid-sentence like I suddenly had somewhere else to be. I could feel her noticing, though she never called it out. She'd just nod, sip her tea, let silence do the talking. And silence can get loud. One evening Hamza called while I was sitting with her. Video call. Rare. I almost declined. Didn't. Bro, you at the cafe again? He asked casually. Then his eyes flicked past the screen. Recognition dawning. Oh, Amy's there too. Mrs. Sanaa smiled politely toward the phone. Nothing unusual. Still, I felt my shoulders tighten. After the call ended, neither of us spoke for a minute. Finally, she said, very gently, "You don't have to feel awkward. It's just tea." Yeah, I know. But my voice didn't sound convinced, even to me. That night, I left early. For the next few days, I skipped the cafe entirely. Told myself it was healthier, less confusing, more appropriate. Strangely, my evenings got longer instead of fuller. I caught myself typing her number once. She'd save mine when returning the umbrella, then deleting it before the call could connect. Ridiculous, honestly. When I finally went back, it was raining again. Not dramatic rain, just steady, gray, patient. She was already there. You disappeared, she said. Not accusing, just stating weather. Busy. A pause. Then, right? We shared tea. Fewer words this time, but not uncomfortable. Just careful, like walking across a floor you suspect might creak. At one point, thunder rolled unexpectedly loud. I flinched barely, but she noticed. Her hand moved instinctively toward mine on the table. Stopped just short. She seemed to realize it at the same time I did. Fingers hovering, then retreating, wrapping around her cup instead. Sorry, she murmured. For what? She didn't answer. Just shook her head slightly. The moment hung there. Not dramatic, just unfinished. When we stood to leave, the awning outside was dripping steadily. We hesitated at the doorway, closer than usual because of the narrow space. I caught the faint scent of her shampoo this time. Something simple. Familiar. My brain started doing that dangerous thing, imagining what it'd feel like not to step back. Her eyes met mine, steady, searching. For a second, neither of us moved, and it felt like something might happen, or be said, or quietly understood. But then someone pushed past us to get out of the rain, and the spell broke. We stepped aside, distance restored. She gave a small smile. Not sad, not relieved either, just careful again. And as she walked away into the rain, umbrella tilted slightly, I found myself standing there longer than necessary, wondering if that almost moment had been real, or just something I wasn't ready to name yet. Friend Mom's innocent connection that became dangerous. Part 4. The quiet edge, it wasn't the cafe this time. That was probably intentional, though neither of us said it out loud. Too many almost moments there already. Too many familiar routines that had started to feel loaded. We ended up walking instead, just after sunset. That small park behind the pharmacy, uneven pathway, half-lit benches, the occasional stray cat pretending not to watch people. It started casually. She'd texted earlier. Need some air? Walk. Nothing dramatic. Still, my chest tightened reading it. When I arrived, she was already sitting on a bench, thermos beside her. She poured tea into 2 small steel cups without asking if I wanted any. You came, she said. Yeah. Simple exchange. But her voice carried something heavier underneath. We walked slowly after that. No destination. Gravel crunching under our shoes. A couple passed us laughing too loudly, then silence again. She seemed distracted, kept smoothing the edge of her sleeve, then stopping herself. Micro habit I hadn't noticed before. Finally, she said, Hamza mentioned a girl from your department. Said you used to talk a lot. So that was it. There was someone, I said. Didn't really go anywhere. She nodded, but her pace changed slightly, slower now. Thoughtful. Good, she murmured, then quickly added, I mean good that you have options. People your age should. The phrasing lingered. People your age. I felt something twist quietly inside. You say that like there's a rule book, I said. There kind of is. A long pause followed, wind moving through dry leaves. Someone's phone ringing distantly. Then she stopped walking altogether. I need to be careful, she said, mostly to the ground. You probably should too. I didn't answer immediately. Honestly, I wasn't sure which part she meant, public perception, Hamza, the age gap, or something else neither of us had named yet. You think I don't know that? I finally said, softer than intended. She looked up then, eyes steady but tired in a way I hadn't seen before. It's not about knowing, she said. It's about slipping anyway. The words hung there. For a second, I imagined reaching for her hand, just to steady things, or maybe unsteady them completely. Hard to tell. Instead, I shoved my hands into my pockets. Cowardly. Safe. Necessary. I don't want to complicate your life, I said. And I don't want to pretend this is nothing, she replied. That was the closest either of us had come to saying it plainly. No declarations. No labels. Just acknowledgement, quiet, exposed. We drifted back toward the bench. Sat again, close enough that our shoulders almost touched, not quite. She poured the last of the tea. Her hand trembled slightly. First time I'd seen that. You ever think, she began, then stopped. Restarted. You ever think some connections show up at the wrong time on purpose? Like a test you didn't sign up for. I didn't have a rehearsed answer. Just honesty. Yeah, I said. And sometimes I wonder what happens if you stop treating it like a test. She turned toward me fully then, searching my face in that steady way she has. No es mal, no chill, just openness. And something very close to a question, whether she meant to ask it or not. Neither of us moved. Not yet. But the space between us felt thinner than it ever had before, and I couldn't stop wondering which of us was about to cross it first. Friend Mom's innocent connection that became dangerous. Part 5. The delay after that walk. Something should have happened. Not necessarily dramatic. Not a confession or a kiss. Just forward movement. That's what it felt like we'd been circling toward. Instead, she disappeared. Not completely. Just enough to be noticed. The cafe chairs stayed empty. Messages became shorter. Then slower. Then mostly logistical. Take care, busy today, rain expected. Neutral things that didn't invite continuation. At first I assumed I'd imagine the shift. People get busy. Life stacks up. Still, evenings stretched again. I caught myself checking the cafe entrance, even on days I promised not to go. Habit is stubborn like that. One afternoon I did see her, but not alone. Outside the pharmacy, talking to a man about her age. Comfortable conversation. Familiar body language. Not romantic exactly, but established. History, maybe. She spotted me briefly. Small nod. Nothing else. Later that night, a message finally came. I should have told you earlier. Hamza's father wants to try again. Not officially, just talking. That was it. No explanation. No emotion en unpacking. Just a fact. I stared at the screen longer than I'd admit, waiting for a second message that never arrived. Oddly, I didn't feel dramatic heartbreak. No cinematic collapse. Just a strange stillness. Like someone had pressed pause mid-scene. The next few days blurred. I stopped going to the cafe altogether. Not as a statement. More like self-preservation. Too many echoes there. Friends asked if I was okay. I said yes automatically. Technically true. Nothing had actually happened, right? That's the confusing part about almost relationships. No clear ending. No official beginning either. Just absence. I did run into Hamza once. He mentioned his parents talking again, cautiously optimistic. I smiled, said that sounded good. And I meant it. Mostly. But a quieter thought kept looping underneath. Where does that leave us? Not that there was an us to begin with. One evening I opened our chat. Scrolled back further than necessary. Umbrella messages, tea jokes, those ordinary exchanges that had somehow carried more weight than they looked. I typed, "Are you okay with all this?" Deleted it. Typed again. "I miss our talks." Deleted that too. Both felt selfish in different ways. Instead, I put the phone face down and made tea at home. Too sweet by accident. I left the last sip untouched without thinking. Some habits really don't negotiate. A week later, curiosity got the better of me. I walked past the cafe. Not inside, just past. Her usual seat was occupied by someone else. Laughing loudly. No trace of quiet conversations ever having happened there. That's when it hit me, oddly gently. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. That night, I opened our chat again. Typed one more message. Something simple, neutral, safe. My thumb hovered over send for a long time. Then the screen dimmed, and the message stayed there, unsent. Friend Mom's innocent connection that became dangerous. Part 6. The choice to speak I didn't plan to go. Even when her message finally came, short, careful, unmistakably hers, I stared at it for an hour before moving. "Can you come by?" "Usted." Nothing complicated. Nothing complicated. That phrase alone almost made me decline. But I went anyway. Her house looked exactly as I remembered from Hamza's visits years ago. Same dim porch light. Same slightly crooked nameplate. Familiar enough to feel safe. Unfamiliar enough now to make my chest tight. She opened the door before I knocked fully. Like she'd been standing there already. "Hi," she said. No hug. No awkward handshake either. Just that small space between people who don't know which version of themselves they're supposed to be. Inside smelled faintly of cardamom tea. Kitchen light warm, but not bright. A quiet house. The kind where every sound carries a little further than usual. She poured tea without asking how I take it. Old habit. Less sugar. We sat at the small kitchen table. No dramatic build-up. Just cups warming our hands. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she exhaled slowly. "It's not working. With Hamza's father. We tried talking again, but some things don't rewind." I nodded. Didn't rush to respond. "I should have told you sooner," she added. "Instead of disappearing. You didn't owe me updates," I said automatically. Her eyes lifted at that. Searching. Slight frown. Maybe not. But silence can still hurt people. That landed quietly. I traced a drop of tea condensation down my cup. Micro delay. Collecting words. "I wasn't hurt exactly," I said. "Just unsure where to stand." "Same," she admitted. Another pause. Not empty. Just full of things neither of us wanted to oversimplify. Finally, I said it. Not dramatically. Just honestly. "I missed you." No music swelling. No cinematic reaction. She simply absorbed it, shoulders softening a fraction. "I missed you too," she said. There it was. Plain. Risky in its own quiet way. The air shifted, Not explosive, just clearer. I kept thinking about what you said in the park. I added. About tests we didn't sign up for. She smiled faintly. And maybe it's not a test. Maybe it's just timing being inconvenient. A small huff of laughter escaped her. Not quite amusement, more recognition. That sounds like something you'd say when you're about to complicate your own life. Probably. Silence again, but softer now. She reached across the table then, slow enough that I could have pulled back if I wanted. I didn't. Her hand rested lightly over mine. Warm. Steady this time. No ruse. No escalation. Just contact. I don't have answers, she said. And I can't promise neat outcomes. I'm not asking for neat. Our eyes met. Honest. A little tired, but open. After a moment, she squeezed my hand gently, then let go. Okay, she asked. Not okay forever. Not okay, romantically. Just okay for now. Okay, I said back. And strangely, that felt like enough. Friend Mom's innocent connection that became dangerous. Part 7. Where things settled, nothing changed overnight after that kitchen conversation. Actually, for a while, almost nothing changed at all. We didn't suddenly become a couple. No announcements. No dramatic decisions. Just small adjustments that slowly stacked up. Messages that didn't hesitate as much. Occasional walks that felt less like negotiations. Shared silences that stopped needing explanation. Time did most of the work. The cafe eventually became ours again, but differently. Not the cautious, charged version from before. Quieter. Familiar. Sometimes we sat there without even talking, just letting the ceiling fan click above us like it always had. She still reminded the waiter about less sugar. I still left the last sip untouched. Some things don't evolve, they anchor you. Hamza figured out gradually. No confrontation. Just one evening he looked between us, half-smiled, and said, "You both seem lighter." Then he let it rest there. That helped more than any formal approval could have. Months passed. Seasons shifted subtly. We stopped measuring everything. Sometimes I dropped by her place after work. Never late, never secretive. Kitchen tea, low conversation, her dry observations about daily life. Once she laughed, so suddenly at something small that she covered her mouth like she'd surprised herself. That stayed with me. And slowly, the risk stopped feeling like danger. It just became reality. Not perfect. We still have pauses. Still occasionally step back to make sure we're not drifting somewhere unexamined. But there's warmth now where tension used to sit. This morning, for example, 8:47 a.m. Exactly. We were on that same park bench where things once almost unraveled. She had her thermos. I had black coffee because she insists I should sometimes graduate from tea. We didn't talk about the past. We rarely do. Instead, she pointed out how the stray cat population there seems to rotate leadership every few months. I told her she was overanalyzing cats again. She said someone has to. Comfortable nonsense. The best kind. At one point, her shoulder rested lightly against mine. Not tentative. Not performative. Just natural like it had always been allowed. And I realized something simple. Life isn't louder now. It's steadier. Loneliness didn't vanish dramatically. It softened. Became shared instead of private. Sometimes she still folds napkins absent-mindedly. Sometimes I still type messages I don't send, just fewer now, because most of what matters gets said eventually. No grand declarations ever happened. Probably never will. That's not our language. But when she handed me tea this morning and said, "Same as always," it didn't feel routine. It felt chosen. And as we sat there, sunlight filtering through those uneven trees, I had this quiet thought neither of us needed to voice. Some connections aren't dangerous. They're just patient enough to wait until you're both ready.